Welcome to the first challenge of this departmental December month. So we're working with the finance department's data for this challenge. So the first thing that we really need to do is to make sure that we've got this cleaned with data interpreter box checked over on the left-hand side in the data connection pane so that we get these three separate tables coming in. So the first one, when we bring it out, is this Lewisham, and then we've got Wimbledon and York. And if we just take a look at those data sets, then we can see that what we have is that the store name or the branch is being read in as a field header rather than as a separate field. So how do we work around this issue? So the first thing that I did was just union these all together. So union these three tables together. And I merged the fields. So the year 2020 and year 2021 were already merged, but this Lewisham one is the merging of Lewisham and then Wimbledon and then York. So because they're all incorrectly named, so that's how they're getting brought together. So at least the field is correct, the field name is not. So what do we do? How do we get this branch name out? So if we do a separate union over here and we get rid of the year 2020 and year 2021 because we know that those fields we kind of have the correct names and the correct data associated with them. So if we keep the table names and then keep those three stores separate, then we can do a little bit of pivoting magic to get what we want basically. So if we keep the data how it is right now, and then we pivot. So we're doing a columns to rows pivot, just dragging in all those branches into the pivot option there. Then now we have a field that contains all of our branch names, and we'll just rename that to be branch. And we still have our table names in there and our pivot one values. The reason we have our table names still, usually when we're doing unions, we kind of remove this, but this is going to help us so we can see that the range there is going to match up to the range in our other union step, and therefore we can join these two together so that we know that the right store is being associated with the right sales profit and so on and so forth. So we do a join between those union and the pivot, and we join on the table names, but also we join up that Lewisham field to the pivot one values, and that will give us our branch attached to the rest of our data. So looking at this data after we've removed a couple of fields, then this is starting to get a little bit closer to the output that we're looking for. So we have our branch in one field here. We've got pivot one values giving us our measure names. Then we've got our year 2020 and year 2021. So one of the other steps we know we need to do is pivot these years down into one field, into the same field, sorry. So we have a year field and then we have all the values in one field. So we go ahead and do that pivot. This time I've used a wildcard pivot searching for the word year so that, in theory, it could dynamically adjust if there were more years in there. And then we just need to do a little bit of renaming. So, okay, we're not renaming it this step, we're just looking at that pivot one name step that we now have. So here we've got year 2020 and year 2021, we want to remove the word year from there. So if we go ahead and do that, so I did that by going to the field there, going to the clean there and removing the letters, and then also removing the extra spaces or trimming the spaces. Any one of these options will probably work, to be honest. And we're just renaming that to recorded year. Okay, so that's those two steps, those three steps in the changes pane. And then we're creating a calculated field. So what we're looking at here is you can see that our year field at the moment here is the values actually. So we're just writing a quick calculation that says if our pivot one values contains an M, then that means that it's 1,000,000. So we're going to multiply the year by 1,000,000. And rather than typing out 6 zeros, I preferred to do it as, using the power function there, doing power 10 to the power 6 is basically what that's saying, to give it those 6 zeros that make it a million. I just don't trust myself to type 6 zeros. I'd probably do one too many or one too few, something like that. So that's how I'd rather write it. And then the else if that pivot one values contains a k, so in the example here, profit k, then we want to multiply it by 1,000. Again, just doing 10 to the power 3 there, and then otherwise leave it alone. So the number of staff. Oh, I've just realized that there's an error in my output here. So what I meant to do here was have a bracket around my M units and a bracket around my K units, because otherwise, as you can see with that number of staff, just because there's an M in the word number, it's picked that up. So if I now apply that, then we see that, okay, that's much better. My 15 gets left alone, my 16 gets left alone. This is why you should always check your calculations are doing what you think they should be. And then I can remove that year field. And then finally, only one step left to go, and that's to clean up this field here. So what I do here is I'm coming to this pivot one values, and I'm just going to split my values, do a custom split based on that opening bracket, and split off the first field, and that returns to me my clean measure names. So I just rename that to be clean measure names and get rid of that one, and then this is the output that we're looking for. So I thought this was a great challenge. Thanks for the challenge, Carl, and I hope you enjoyed watching.